So the first real question would be just an introduction of yourself. So who you are, what your message is, and sort of how things began and how they are now, really.
Oh, okay. So I'm Millie. I'm from Millie Manders and The Shutup. I'm not really sure what my message would be. I have varying messages depending on my uh, level of anger and what I'm dealing with at the time. Um, so I guess where what was the other bit? Where have I come from and where am I going?
Yeah, yeah. How did you start, and how what's your trajectory now? I think I've used to use a posh
I
word, I guess.
started I started music lessons when I was 5. Um, so that's a whole long journey of music, and at the moment I'm going towards a second album with this project that I've been with for the Shut Up has been around for 9 years. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. So one thing I've noticed from listening to your music is your vocally your voice is very very strong. So it's very very rocky sound. There's a real sort of like depth to it, and you're probably just as good live as you are on record. So what was the secret to developing such a strong voice? I'm a bit of a vocal nerd because I'm a singer
I'm actually
myself.
classically trained.
Right. Okay.
um so I mean, I could sing anyway. I was in choirs. I'm very lucky. I was naturally able to hold a tune from a very early age. So I was doing sort of theatre and choir and things from quite young. Um, and then when I got to 15, my voice started really developing, and I really had about a 2.5 to 3 octave range even at 15. As a mezzo soprano, I could sing the whole of Les Mis quite easily, and Phantom of the Opera. So my mum took me to singing lessons when I was 15. And I was really lucky to get, like, I think I only got about 6 weeks of lessons, but that laid the foundation for me to understand more about my vocal biology and about how important it is to not only to maintain but to strengthen the voice.
Feel like a
And then
muscle.
yeah, and then from there it was about, as any instrumentalist does, they seek out peers and mimic, and that helps to learn further techniques around what they want to do. So my peers were people like Aretha Franklin and Pink and Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries and Skin from Skunk Anansie, Gwen Stefani's just really unique, strong female vocals
Yeah.
that had their own sense of style, and they all had their own sense of little tricks and things that they would do with their voice that made them stand out. Um, and so I did a lot of work around that kind of thing, and thinking about the direction I wanted to go in with my voice. And so I've ended up developing my own style that way.
Excellent. That's a good answer. On the note of, obviously you mentioned about being classically trained. So obviously, one of the challenges of being a rock singer, compared to those stars generally, is the being able to hear yourself over the racket behind you. So is that something that you were aware of back then when you were first learning to sing, or is it something that developed over time?
The ability to listen to myself.
Yeah.
I don't think that's anything you can really understand until you get into bands.
Okay.
Um, and then from there, I mean, again, young instrumentalists are arrogant, so they all want to hear themselves above everybody else,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
me included. And so it was learning to work as a team and learning how to soundscape and think about, well, if this is what it sounds like on a CD, this is what it should sound like in a rehearsal room. This is what it should sound like on a stage. This is how an audience should hear it in terms of like the volumes of each of the instruments and how they work together, how they communicate together. Um, and so that was a long, drawn out process of learning that. And then from there, it's a money thing. Um, Finding the budget to do things like get in-ears, because
Yeah.
personally I will never go back from using in-ears. And recently we've even got now a mixing station that we all use with a Wi-Fi on stage, which means that we can all have our own personal mixes on our phones, so we're all hearing what we need to hear as well as hearing what we want to hear in order to give the best performance, which has then reduced the sound on stage because now we have no monitors. It means that the sound out the front is much cleaner, so the audience gets the best sound possible because they don't have us fighting for what we need to hear on stage. But I think even that's still evolving. There's things that we already have in mind to develop that to make it even better. not just for us, but for the performance as well.
Okay, interesting. So on more on the sort of musical style front. So obviously, I listen to quite a lot of the stuff that's on Spotify, and you're
Mhm.
very multi-genre
Yeah.
focus. There's lots of different genres in there, but all the songs I listen to definitely have your sort of Millie Manders stamp on them. So when you're creating music and writing music and performing music, how do you, with all the genres being pulled in, how do you keep that base of being your own style?
Um, not not to be like I'm the be all and end all, but I like my voice is the stamp really, because I think it's the fact that I use so many different styles vocally, but I have quite a unique tone. Like nobody else
Yeah.
really sounds like me. People say, "Oh, you sound like Pink," or "Oh, you sound like Skin," or "You sound like Tracy Chapman." That was many years ago when I was more of a jazzy type acoustic singer. But nobody really pins it down. It's not like I get the same thing over and over and over again. It's more that they can hear techniques. So when people hear a song, they kind of know it's us, but that's largely down to the focus of the vocal being at the front, the politicism in the lyricism, talking about mental health, that kind of thing, the type of melodies that I use on that. Um, and then I think when we're in the studio, we're very focused with getting as much out of each track as we can, and guiding each other. Like we all have good input. The team that I have now, when we're writing, all of us can take criticism, and all
Hmm.
of us can take somebody saying, "Have you tried that?" Okay, no, I'm going to try it. Well, I don't like that, so I'm not going to do it. Well, that's fine. At least you tried it, you know? And I think that shows kind of the maturity in the journey that we've had in terms of developing our sound and trying to get the best out of what we're doing.
So do you on that then, so when you come to write a song or a piece of music, do you come from that angle initially as writing it as a band or group, or do you put something to the band, or is it a variation on different things?
So up to now, previously with my previous teams, a lot of it would have been me,
Hmm.
um, having the chords or the melodies or the entire song in my head and being like, this is what I want to hear. And giving some freedom to the musicians, but largely because I didn't have musicians that I was able to write with in the same way, be it because of distance or their commitments or whatever. I was doing a lot of the work. I did write with other people, and they did have input. So there's various royalty splits depending on which song that you're looking at, but some of them were largely me. A lot of them were largely me. This time around, I have a team who actively want to be part of that process, and that
Okay.
really excites me. So we've been doing a lot more things like writing retreats where we've dedicated a whole week to sitting in a room together and either bringing in ideas and working on those and developing them, or starting from scratch from like a few chords or whatever, and then going, okay, well, where can this go? Oh, I really like that. How have we thought about taking this kind of influence with it? Oh, we haven't written anything very metal. Let's do something really metal today, you
Okay.
know? Um, and that's been really exciting, because all of my band members have very different influences and backgrounds in the way that they've been taught and the way that they've been influenced in their musicianship and styles, and that it's really lovely because it expands your own ability, it broadens your own horizons of how to write and what you want to write about.
Okay, that's interesting. I think you may have said that you're multi-instrumentalist. So when you write music, do you write like say on a piano or guitar or something like that, or is it just a case of whatever takes your fancy and then the song builds from there?
Um, it's not even whatever takes my fancy. It's more like if creativity takes hold, I
Okay.
run with it because I'm scared of losing it. Um, I have multiple voice notes on my phone, constantly. Um, Sometimes I'll be with my ukulele or my guitar and I'm just bimbling about on there and something comes of it. Or Joe might send me a track and I might have a set of lyrics that I feel really works with the flow of the track, and then the melodies will come as a result. Um, I don't really have a set process. I don't like having a set process, because I think that all creativity is valuable.
Hmm.
Uh, there's many more songs that I bin than them that I keep going with. But again, that's just part of the creative process, and I think all of that is important.
Okay, so what would you say your favorite song to perform live is then? That you've done?
Probably at the moment, Bitter or Your Story. mainly because like Bitter is a real angry rager. And it's really cathartic still just to properly scream and go with that, and also getting the audience involved and hearing a whole audience singing "I'm Bitter" back at me is like, it's a punch in the gut, you know. Um, your story is probably at the moment my most vocally acrobatic. So that's just really fun for me to sing and go through all of my register and that kind of thing. Um, and I guess I'd have to include Not Okay, not because it's like my favorite song. And actually, before the audience reaction, Not Okay wasn't really was low down on my list, on my song lists for the previous album. But the reaction we get and the amount of people that connect to it emotively makes me love that song.
Hmm. On your story, I've been trying to learn it by ear on guitar, and what I like about it, guitar wise, and actually you can hear that through the whole song, is that the rhythms all change quite a lot. So sort of in a way it's a simple song, to sort of sing along with, with the melody and everything like that. But there's lots of little intricate the melody stays much the same, but the rhythm and how you approach it and then how you sing it changes. So it's like a deceptively complicated song. So I kind of agree with you there. It sounds really pretentious, doesn't it? But
I always say to people I write really simple songs, and I feel like I do, certainly in terms of like hooks and things that people can sing along with. I'm not particularly technical with my
okay.
music. I can read music relatively well, and I can write songs, but somebody that's into technical music wouldn't take a bite out of this apple, you know. But yeah, your story was one of the ones I find when I have a song just completely in my head, those come out more technical because I haven't written it on a guitar. I don't know if that
Okay.
makes sense.
No,
It's
it does make
because
sense. Yeah.
I don't have that thing to make it simple with like
Yeah.
the chord structures and stuff. And I'm just like, it's all in here and I can hear all of the horn lines and I can hear the bass line and I can hear the guitar. And I'm just like, I need to get this out. Somebody needs to sit with me. Like somebody, you have a guitar, sit, work this out with me. And it's just like trying to get it all out of my head.
Well, that's really
And
interesting,
it's one of those.
because I've spoken to a couple of people in the past, and they've said about like composing music for games, funny enough, actually, and they've said about building up the layers and then coloring it in. Whereas you're talking about seeing the whole thing in your head and then trying to get it out there. That sounds really well. I'm in awe of that, because I don't think like that at all. I mean, I'm sort of like I'm a layering person with things. I'll see what comes out. I wish I could have that big picture
Oh,
look at it, but
no, it's much easier to do the layering thing. It
right.
really is. As I say, like sometimes that is, the case is that I have songs that they're just in my head. And I might need Rebound was one of those. It was in my
Hmm.
head, it was stuck in my head for weeks. And I was on tour, so I couldn't do anything about it. So I was singing little bits into my microphone on my phone. And then I came home and I had to get my guitar. Thankfully, it was a really simple chord structure and it was very easy for me. Your story, though, was much more messy. And I find that if you've got something like that completely in your head, it is so messy because it's so difficult to articulate what your brain is playing. Much easier to start off with a simple chord
Yeah.
structure, and be able to sing something really simple into your phone and then go to your musicians and be like, I can kind of hear this. I feel like maybe the structure needs to be worked around a little bit, but here, go with this, go make things.
Yeah.
Much, much easier. Having it all in your head, as I say, it's a bit like, it feels to me like somebody who has the idea of an oil painting in their head, but
Hmm.
none of the artistic skill.
Mm. Probably
So
a bit of a
conceived
bit of a curse.
incredible creation.
Yeah.
They have no way of using their paintbrushes to create it. That's how I feel when I have an entire song in my
Okay.
head. I don't have the skill to get it out there.
Sounds like it'll take quite a lot longer to come up with something like that, though. But it's probably worth it in the long run, because you've got this
Sure.
idea that's just been rattling around for a while, and eventually you get there and you're like, okay, it's probably worth it. And
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
okay. On a sort of similar note, then, because I've looked at a couple of interviews you've mentioned. You've mentioned about having a very sort of eclectic approach to music. I think you used a phrase about like that's kind of like your life, your passion, and everything like that. So, is that something that I think you mentioned about doing a qualification and then applying it straight away? Do you think that's extremely important in everything with music, like with the marketing and the whole package? Is that the way you think everyone should approach it,
No,
or
I think
yeah,
everybody should approach anything they like the way they want to approach it
fair
and
enough.
whatever's comfortable for them. When I went to uni, I already had been doing music since I was 5, and I had been doing retail management for more than a decade. So it made sense to me to marry those two things by going and doing a degree in music management rather than music performance, because I didn't have grade 5 theory anyway, so that wasn't going to
Yeah,
work. Um, and so it was an easy thing for me to then practically apply to the career I was already starting. Oh, okay, I'm majoring in marketing and entrepreneurial skills. I'm clearly good at this. Let's activate it and put it into the music. Same with social media management and events management, and all of the other skills that you learn on a music business degree. Because I was already doing business, I already understood how to run a store, and what else is a band than a store for
yeah,
shows, tickets, merchandise. It's all branding, it's
yeah.
all, and I say that to my students and the young musicians that I help develop. You're a business, and unless you become your business and start running it like a business, it's still going to stay a hobby in a pub, probably, because we don't have the industry where we had hundreds of A&R just running around tiny little pubs and picking you up for £1 million record deal. That's, as much as we would all love that kind of fairy tale ending, it doesn't happen anymore.
So here's a question for you, because I know exactly what you mean. Do you think that that's better in a way, that because to me, like with things like YouTube and these platforms where you can publish things, it seems like everyone's got a way to publish their own music and or whatever art they've got, but also you don't have the people looking for you. Do you think it's better? It's a more free, or do you think it's not as good?
I
Yeah,
just
just
think it's
different.
different.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, what's the point in calling the music industry better or worse? It just is.
Yeah.
The music industry has made some terrible mistakes. All of the record companies made a terrible mistake when they didn't believe Microsoft, when Microsoft said the internet is going to get so fast people can download music, and they laughed. We all know the stories. We know the problems with it. We know that, we get piss all for our streaming and all the rest of it.
Mm.
But this is the situation we're in. And so there is no better or worse. It was hard then. We had, if we look at David Bowie and the Specials and the Rolling Stones and the journeys that they took, if you read any of their biographies, they were all sitting on amps in the back of vans. They were all sleeping in their vans in Tin Pan Alley. They were all eating really low grade food in order to tour, in order to get themselves noticed by record companies. And thankfully they did, but they were all touring 10 or so years before they started to really kick off their careers. I would say that rather than 10,000 hours, it's more like 100,000 hours these days. You definitely, I would say, instead of taking 10 years to get noticed, you're now taking 15 to 20 years to get noticed,
Okay.
especially in the alternative genres. But I don't know what it's like in a pop genre, so I can't really comment on that anyway. I would say that it's probably still fairly similar. It takes a lot. You're really lucky if you do get liked into the industry. And I mean that in a literal sense. If there are a bunch of national or international magazines, radio stations, playlists that like you, one, you've probably got some kick-ass songs and production. But two, you're really lucky to have been heard within the melee of music. There's so much out there. But then back in the golden era, what did you have? How did you get noticed? You just had to play hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
shows, and an A&R walked into your pub. What's the difference to me? Sod all.
Fair
They're either
enough.
onto your platform or they were walking onto a pub. There's hundreds of thousands of us. Hopefully an A&R will walk onto our page.
I guess what it sounds like you're saying is that if you've got the drive and the ability to do it, then you take advantage of whatever's in front of you to be able to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, you just keep going. And if you're lucky enough to have money, you pile it into your marketing, and you're probably going to get there a bit quicker because you're able to pay for that promotion. And if you don't have money, you're just going to have to do more shows and sell more merchandise so that more people are wearing your shirt, and contact more people and contact more playlists, and it is just hustle, 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 hustle. How can you get your music out there? How can you get people to listen to you? And what are you doing to make sure people like you?
Hmm. So you are on a sort of slight tangent on that. I think during the wonderful lockdown, you had some I think had some revenue from some of your streams and other things going towards charities and stuff like that. So is that something you think is also important in terms of like a giving back type thing from that type of model?
It's important to me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Um, I don't think I have no opinion on somebody else's what they should or shouldn't do.
Hmm.
I chose that during lockdown, with every release of a single, I would do 100 t-shirts and 50 vests, or was it 50 t-shirts and 25 vests? I don't know. I did a limited amount of t-shirts and vests for every single we did, and on each of those, £10 went to charity with every single thing. And we did 3 different charities for 3 different singles. And in Pride this year, we raised £1,368 for gendered intelligence through a Pride t-shirt and vest on Hawker. Personally, I think it's important to give as much as I can, wherever I can, because I have a platform to talk about other issues, not just about the issues that I love and believe in, but if I see something else happening, I want to be able to do something and open other people's eyes about it, whether that's fox hunting or pride or
Yeah.
the NHS going downhill, or the fact that white immigrants seem to be more valuable than brown immigrants at the moment. Whatever the issue is that's making me angry, if I can help even in the tiniest way, I want to do it. But that doesn't mean that everybody can do that or that everybody should.
Well, that's a good answer. That's that. Yeah, I agree with you. If it means anything, I think that's fantastic. It's admirable. I think that's pretty. It's okay. On a note about, I think you've got a tour coming up later in the year. Is the Shut Your Mouth tour?
Yeah.
I know you've played a few bigger shows. You played Slam Dunk earlier in the year and things like that. And there's obviously been more gigs since the end of lockdown for obvious reasons. Have you learned anything specifically from the more recent gigs that you're going to apply to your own tour later in the year?
I don't yes and no. uh there's more preparation happening for this tour.
Okay.
We're pretty organized as a band in terms of what we want to focus on, and we're always self-reflecting on every show. So that's kind of a normal process for us to be like, okay, well, that show was great and we had a great reaction, but this kind of happened on stage. Have we thought about XYZ to make it better, bigger for the audience? Or what about what's our production going to do now? How can we add production value and more pizzazz for the show for people to enjoy it further? But actually, where I learn is by watching other bands, and even teaching. My students school me every day, and I think that's great. But actually at Rebellion, I would say particularly watching people like Barstool Preachers, who we started out at a similar time, around 2014, and we have similar production with the shows and stuff, but watching how far they've come. I haven't seen them perform in 4 years, so seeing their trajectory and what they're doing now, watching Bob Villan and listening to the way he talks passionately about his passionate issues, which are completely different to mine, but it made me stop and think and feel. Yeah, I guess it's more like it's seeing those other bands and some of the bigger bands than us, Less Than Jake, Zebrahead, Bowling for Soup, at places like Slam Dunk, but the bands that are at our level or just above, that are at places like Rebellion, watching them, learning from them, going, okay, you guys are doing that. Well, I don't want to do exactly that, but I have thought about doing this. So perhaps now it's time to develop that area of my performance, and I constantly want to develop. I never think that you should stand still. The minute you stand still, you're going backwards.
Brilliant, I like that answer. Well, we're getting closer to time, unfortunately, because you're very interesting to talk to. So the last question I ask is, have you got anything you would like to plug specifically of your own work?
Well, Ladies, gents, theys and thems, we've got a tour from the 19th to the 19th, from 19th of October to the 19th of November. We're going to be coming around the UK. So please buy tickets. It helps us a lot to make sure that promoters know that we're selling tickets well before the time. We're going to have our new single coming out on the 6th of October. That's Shut Your Mouth, hence the tour name. And there will be a whole bunch of exciting merchandise coming out around that as well. You can find our merchandise on hawker.live. So yeah, and if you want any of the other sites, then please go to linktr.ee/Millie Manders, and all of our links are on there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Millie Manders, for your time. It's been fascinating. Take
Thank you
care.
for the chat. Great
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
Take care. Bye now. Cheers.
Bye.